Thank you. Just, I'll wait till you transfer over to me. Okay. All right, everyone. Thank you all very much for joining us today. I'm sure that you, like me, are very glad that we survived January and year-end, so I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. What we're going to talk about today is the latest version of Sage 100 and Sage 100C, which is the 2017 version. I'm going to show you some of the new features and functionality in that product, and then we'll also talk about what you need to know in order to plan for an upgrade and if you should be planning for an upgrade this year. So thanks for joining me, and we'll get into, I'm going to just bore you for a couple of minutes with a couple of slides, but then we'll get into actually looking at the Sage 100. So with version 17, they have made some global enhancements, which they are having. They have an enhanced autocomplete, and that's a really cool feature that I'm going to show you. So it's basically when you're in a search field and you start maybe like typing the name of a vendor, any vendor that starts with those first few letters that you use, it shows them on the screen so you don't have to click on the magnifying glass. So it's just to kind of help you with that. Also, there is a build search index utility that helps you do some additional searches. There's a full text search option in the Lookup windows. There's a new Lookup feature where you can search for empty fields, and I'll show you how to do that. They've added commodity codes for miscellaneous items and inventory items. They've added prior and next buttons for your calendar window. They've added the ability to resize the memo maintenance window. They've added the ability to remove or to suppress the remove forms message. So, you know, like let's say that when you print your AP checks or you print invoices and the little message pops up and says remove your, remove your forms, and you have to click OK and then move to the register part. You can now set that so that you don't see that message. They've added a larger font for selected reports, and they've also added a cancel button when printing reports. So if you started a report and want to cancel it, you now have a cancel button. They have added the ability to accept ACH payments through AR and sales order, an option to keep the bank reconciliation report window open, and improved export to Excel for financial reports. And bear with me just a second here. This doesn't want to play. And then in Library Master, they have added the a search field to role maintenance. This is really good, and you'll be real excited to see this. And then also in Company Maintenance, they've added some changes for the ACH payments. And then in Sales Order, they've also added the ability to accept ACH payments. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to take you into Sage 100 version 2017 so that you can see some of the options. Now the first thing that I'm going to show you, because we're going to be talking a little bit later about supported versions, is to show you how to check your current version. And in order to check your current version, you're going to go to the Help and then About Sage 100, and it's going to give you the version. It's on 2017, which is also known as 5.4. So after we finish today, if you want to confirm your version or if you're wanting to do that right now, that's how you can tell in your version of Sage. If it still says Mass 90 or MAS 200, it still will give you the version, but I can tell you if it still says MAS 90 or 200, you are running an older unsupported version. Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to show you was the enhanced autocomplete. So if you go into, let's say, accounts payable, and you go into the vendor maintenance, and let's say that I want to look up United Oasis. And so what I'm going to do is, instead of using my magnifying glass, I'm just going to start typing. And as I started typing, it actually brought up any vendor that started with those letters. So I can then select it, and it will actually then bring in that vendor information. So it saves you from having to do your lookup and look at the entire list. And it also saves you, doing F2 does the same thing as the magnifying glass. So the other thing that it's done is it has expanded the autocomplete. For instance, if you want to search for a vendor by phone number, you can start typing the phone number in. You don't use any of the symbols, but just the digits, and that will also help bring that up. So just a few new things that they've added. It's not just in AP, it's in most fields where you have a lookup, where it is doing that autocomplete. So I know clients have been asking for that for a very long time. We've had some functionality previously, but they keep enhancing that to make it easier for you when you're doing a lookup. The other thing that they have done is they've added the ability to search for empty fields in a window lookup. And I know that sounds like a mouthful there, but basically most of you should be aware. If you're not, I'll show you how you can do this. If you're doing a regular lookup, you get standard fields when you're doing a lookup in Sage 100. If you wanted to create a custom lookup, so let's say with the vendors, maybe you also wanted their 1099 information, or wanted to know if a customer was tax exempt in AR, something of that nature, you can do a custom lookup and add those fields. But the other thing that you can do is in this drop down, whether it's a standard search or custom, they've added the field is empty. So let's say that you're wanting to identify any customers that maybe their phone number field is empty, or maybe the primary contact. You want to make sure that your AP staff is filling in those contacts, and you're wanting to find out which ones are missing. You could do that with a custom lookup. But if I say that I want to take a look at if the phone number is empty and do a find, then it's going to bring up just those vendors. And then you can, if you're wanting then to maybe have somebody do a lookup and find out what those numbers are so they can complete them, once you have your screen set up, you can actually then click on this icon and it will export that information out into Excel. Now you can't import it back in unless you use Visual Integrator, but you can export this out to a real quick report. So they've added the is empty as a value in your search list. And again, this isn't just vendor maintenance, but in all of your search lists throughout Sage 100. Okay. All right. The next thing that they've added are commodity codes. And the commodity codes are listed, where they're set up is under Common Information in the setup. There's now a list, or excuse me, there's now an option for commodity code maintenance, pardon me. And what the commodity code is if you have miscellaneous items or inventory items that are subject to where for like credit card processing that you have to list the commodity code so that it calculates things correctly or that it tracks the tariff and that type of thing. You can actually set up commodity codes in your Sage 100, and then when you create those codes in your miscellaneous item maintenance and in your inventory maintenance, you now will have a field where if you use commodity codes, you can then add that to the item. And I believe it is on the additional tab in inventory. I may actually have to have a commodity code set up in order to track it here. Actually, the field is right here. So they've added that, the ability to track those commodity codes. So that field then flows through to your sales order entry and your sales order invoice data entry. And if you pick an item that has a commodity code attached to it, then when you bring that into the sales order, it will then bring over that commodity code. So personally, I haven't had a lot of clients asking me for that, but the more international work and sales that you do, you'll find that that may be required, and it's also required when you do level 3 credit card transactions in the sales order module. So if anybody wants more information specifically on those commodity codes, we can provide you with more information, but I did want to let you know that it's there. Okay. You also have the ability to resize memo fields. So if you go into vendor maintenance, again, you have this in GL, you have it in inventory or AR. If you go in and you have a memo or you select a memo, you have the ability to resize the screens in here. And you did not have that ability before. You just had to kind of scroll down. But you now have the ability to kind of drop and drag so that you can actually see more information within those memo fields. Okay. All right. The other thing that I want to show you, and I'll just, Dee Dee, do you have any questions yet on anything that we've talked about?
Not yet.
Okay. And just to let everyone know that's on the webinar today, I know I'm covering this information pretty quickly. If you want more information about what I'm showing you, I'll be glad to, you can follow up with us after the webinar, and I will be glad to provide you with a document that lists all of the things that I'm going through today, as well as there's an additional document that talks about all of the fixes that were from a prior version that are now included in 2017. So we talked a little bit earlier about the fact that you can now suppress the remove forms message from popping up on your screen. And that basically is based on a role and the user. So you can do it, you may want some users that it pops up and others you don't. So if you go into Library Master and you go under Main and you go to User Maintenance, I'm going to just pull up the, excuse me, I'm going to go here real quick, and then let me, bear with me just a second. Let me go to Role Maintenance and pull up the Supervisor role. Okay. So I'm going to pull up the Supervisor role, and over in the Module options, under Common Information, you actually have a new field that says Show Prompt to Remove Forms from Printer. So the permissions is not based upon the user, but it's actually based upon the role. So for instance, your supervisors, you may not want them to have this prompt, so you would actually uncheck that box, but maybe your AP clerk, you want them to kind of go through that step so that they don't accidentally print reports on checks, and you would make sure that that box is checked. So again, it's based on each individual role. You go into module options, it's under common information, and then it's show prompt to remove forms from printer. Again, what they're doing with a lot of the enhancements that they've added to this particular version is just to make things more streamlined and to save a lot of extra clicks. Okay. Again, I mentioned that you can select larger fonts for selected reports. And previously, a lot of reports only used a 6-point font. And the new font basically is about 30 to 40% taller. So that will help when reviewing some of your reports. I know that as we get older, a lot of us complain that the font is too little and we can't read it very well. So they have made that change. And then also the cancel button is available when printing reports. So you do now have that option as well. Okay, Dee Dee, I'll just see at this point if we have any questions.
Actually, someone asked if this webinar was going to be on our website, and I was just letting him know that yes, we will post the recording to the website, and I'd be happy to send a link later on, either today or early tomorrow morning, with the recording to everybody on the webinar.
Perfect.
So that's the only question right now.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, the one thing that they've added that a lot of people have been asking for is they've added the ability to accept ACH payments. So you can now have the ability to enter ACH payments in through AR invoice data entry, if it's a prepay, through cash receipts entry and accounts receivable, and also repetitive invoice entry. So you can do all of those in accounts receivable. Now, there's a couple of things that you need to take into consideration if you're wanting to do this. If you want to be able to use this feature, you have to have an account with Sage Payment Solutions, and they have a special account for ACH payments. So if you're already, if you don't use Sage Payment Solutions at all, you would have to sign up for an account with them. If you have Sage Payment Solutions that you're currently processing credit cards through sales order and so forth, you still have to have a special account with Sage Payment Solutions. If anyone is interested in finding out more about that or finding out any fees associated with it, let me know. And that's something that we can have Jody Patterson check into for you and provide you pricing and so forth. So one of the things that they've changed is that anywhere it used to say payment type maintenance, except for here, but in company maintenance, where it used to say credit card also, it now says payment. So they've changed that, where anything that says credit card tab is now renamed to payment tab. So basically, if someone is doing ACH and paying you, those payments are submitted to Sage Payment Solutions as a part of the cash receipts journal update process. And so they're not processed individually, but it's more of when you kind of do a cash receipt, that those funds are then going to it's going to be processed through Sage and then come back into your account. So we have not had anyone yet implement this because it is brand new to 2017. You can also do the ACH payments through sales order entry and sales order invoice data entry. So let me just grab this real quick and just show you the screen here. So now where it says, where it used to say credit card, now you have the option of credit card and or ACH, and when you enable payments, you can do credit cards only, which some of you may already be doing. You could, if you're not doing Sage Payment Solutions with credit cards, you can do just ACH only, or you can do both credit cards and ACH. So this is the change that they've made here to allow that. We will be providing more information in detail about this feature and functionality, but I did want to make everyone aware that it did exist. And with that being said, I know that this functionality is not new, but a lot of people still are not aware that you can also take ACH, you can also pay your vendors by ACH. So that functionality has been in the system for several versions. So you've always been able to, for the past probably 2 or 3 years at least, been able to pay your vendors via ACH, but now your customers are going to be able to pay you via ACH as well. So what I would suggest is that when you get a follow-up from this webinar, if you want more detail or more specifics on how this is going to work, or to find out how you sign up with Sage Payment Solutions and any fees that may be associated with that, is to let us know, and we'll be glad to provide that information. Okay. All right. The another option that they've added in BankRec, and again this is more of just a convenience type thing, is that when you print your bank reconciliation report, you now have the window that allows you to keep the window open after you've previewed it. So you have not had this before in BankRec, so they have added that screen. And then also they've improved that when you can export, you can export your BankRec reports to Excel. And what they've done now is when you export that file to Excel, it has a minimum font size of 8 points, so it's making it larger. And also they've built in that if there are any empty columns or rows, that those are minimized. So you're not seeing all that empty information when you're exporting those BankRec reports to Excel. If there is, I'll just have, you can let Dee Dee know by responding through the chat if there's anyone on this call that is using Sage CRM. They have made some changes and new features to Sage CRM version 7.3. However, I was not planning on covering that today. If you do use Sage CRM, let us know, and we can certainly get in touch with you and let you know the new features that have been added to that product as well. Talking about exporting and having better visibility when you're exporting to Excel, they've also added in the general ledger when you export financial reports to Excel. They've also made the view easier and made it easier to manipulate so that your minimum font size is 8 points in there as well. And the empty columns and rows are minimized. So you have that in your BankRec report and also in your financial reporting. So the next thing I want to show you, and this one I think we will all love, even the consultants here when we're doing new implementations or assisting with setting up new users or doing training on role maintenance. They have added a search to role maintenance. So let's say that you want to find everywhere that someone has rights in AP. So like let's say that you have a supervisor may have rights to everything, but maybe they only have rights to certain things. So what you can do is you can now say that you want this to, let's do AP. Give me just a second here. I'm trying to remember how this feature works. Give me just a second. Oh, here we go. So if you're looking at a supervisor role, or maybe you have an AP clerk role, if you pull up that role and then you do the search, and as you know, you have accounts payable listed under tasks, you'll have AP listed under security events, you may have it listed under module options, and even your ODBC and S data security. So if I do the search at the bottom of the screen and just type in AP and hit enter, it shows me everywhere within the supervisor role that they have AP access. So now I did it with just the letters AP. So approaching overtime report showed up. If I wanted it to just be the AP module, I could do A/P, and then it's going to bring in more information, and it's going to show you everywhere that you can set something up for accounts payable. So it really just helps in making sure that you've hit everything that someone needs to have access to. I know that sounds, I'm not explaining this very well at the moment, but if you're used to setting up role maintenance, you'll understand how that can just be of a real benefit in being able to do that. So Dee Dee, I'm going to open that up and see if anybody has any questions or if they want me to go through that again.
No, I think they must have gotten it. There's no questions at the moment.
Okay. Okay. And you can always follow up after the webinar, and I'll be glad to go through this again. But this is a search feature that they've added. Okay. I showed you in company maintenance where they've changed the credit card tab to, or the credit card tab for the payment tab. And then we've talked about the changes in sales order for the ability to accept ACH payments as well. So that really is an overview of what they've added for 2017. So 2017 is really more of a making things more easier, less clicks, more user-friendly for the end user. If you're on an older version of Sage, you know, each version has new features and functionality that has been added. So let's say, for instance, that you check your version and you're on version 4.50. Or maybe you're on version 5.0. There's a lot of things that have been added since then. So if you're looking to upgrade, we have documentations for every version that shows you what has been added. So if you're on, for instance, 4.5 or 5.0, when you upgrade to 2017, you're going to receive any of the enhancements that have been added from your current version all the way through 2017. All we're talking about today are the new features in the 2017 version. In just a moment, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint presentation and talk to you a little bit about the supported versions. So we will go back there. Okay. So one of the things that I want to share with you, and I know that you're just getting through year end and you really can't plan what's going to happen in the third or fourth quarter of this year yet, but you need to be aware that the version 2014, which is also version 5.1, is going to be retiring in September of this year. So what that means to you is that Sage will no longer be providing any patches or updates to that version. They will no longer be providing phone support for that version. Oasis will continue to support you. However, if we ran into an issue that we could not address, Sage would not assist us with that. They would indicate that you're on a retired version and that you needed to upgrade. The critical piece, and what really is something that you need to think about, is if you use the payroll module and you're still on 5.1, you do need to plan on an upgrade this year, because Sage is no longer issuing any tax table updates or payroll year-end updates. They provided them through the end of December, and I think there were a couple of straggling tax table updates that came out the first couple of weeks in January, so they did provide those for the 5.1 version, but that's all they're going to be doing. So if you get into year-end, we're not going to be able to download the tax tables for you. If there are any changes, you know, at this point, who knows what's going to happen with ACA reporting, if that's going to change or what's going to be required at the end of the year. If there are any changes to the W-2 form, we will not be able to load any of those patches for you. By the same token, you may run into the same issue if you print 1099s and there are any changes to the 1099s form for 2017. So this table that I'm showing you basically shows each version, so and when it's going to be retired. So Sage basically retires a version a year, and they just retired in September of last year the 2013 version, which was 5.0. So if you're on 5.1 or lower, I would suggest that you give us a call and start planning an upgrade. We'll be glad to provide you with information about that upgrade process. And this is showing the previously retired version, so I don't think you really need to know what was retired back in 2002, but it does show you how Sage handles the retirement of those versions. The thing that I wanted to let you know is to talk to you a little bit about if you want to upgrade. And I'm going to skip down to the FAQs and then talk about how to request an upgrade. So as most of you have probably experienced before and are familiar with our process, is that Oasis does perform a pre-upgrade analysis for any client that is requesting an upgrade. Those analyses are fixed fee engagements, and the cost of that is determined by the version that you're running, the number of modules that you have, the number of users, if you have any third-party products. But you will know the cost of that up front at the time you're requesting it, and you'll know what the cost is before you actually make the request. And upon completion of that pre-upgrade analysis, we are then going to present to you a detailed scope of work that will outline everything that we're going to handle and need to do during your particular upgrade. And we do this to minimize your downtime, to make sure that we have all the bases covered, and then once we get this upgrade done, that we're testing your forms, we're testing any reports, imports or exports. If there's new features and functionality that you want to implement at the time of the upgrade, we'll get that taken care of and tested and do training, and that you're ready to go once we finish. And again, we've minimized the downtime as much as possible and minimized any surprises after the upgrade. We have a lot of folks that until October or November, and they need to upgrade prior to the end of the year. So what you need to keep in mind is that typically our lead time is about 3 to 5 weeks from the time that you approve the scope of work. Not that we start the pre-upgrade analysis, but that you approve the scope of work. That time, that lead time can increase the later we get in the year. And if you do have custom programming, whether it's something that Oasis has done for you that's customized, or whether you have a third-party product, something from DSD, a barcode scanning solution, that the lead time is typically about 10 to 16 weeks. So again, please keep that in mind when you're thinking about planning an upgrade. So if you want to request an upgrade, or you want more information, if you would contact Dee Dee Crotty, and I have her email address listed here, and she will forward to you an upgrade request form, and then she's also going to forward to you a supported platform matrix. And that supported platform matrix is going to let you know the requirements for the 2017 version for your server, your operating system, and your workstations. So we'll get that to you with the request. We'll have you share that with your IT folks and make sure that your hardware is compliant. Keep in mind that if it's not compliant, then that can add to your lead time, because you're going to have to, plan on getting new or updated hardware. If you've purchased a new server within the last couple of years, you're probably just fine, but we always like to have you check that with your IT folks so that there are no surprises on the day that we're ready to install and start upgrading. So I'll see if anybody has any questions about the upgrade.
No, they don't.
Okay. So thank you all for your time today. Again, if anyone would like the detailed information on everything that I covered today, just let us know and we'll be glad to forward that document. If you are on an older version and you'd like to know any of the enhancements that have been added to prior versions, let us know. We'll be glad to get that over to you. And one final thing, some of you have, we've performed a pre-upgrade analysis within the past few weeks, and right now what we're saying when we send you a scope of work is that we're either going to upgrade you to the 2016 version or the 2017 version. Just to clarify that, the 2017 version was released back in late October. Oasis's position has always been that we wait until it's been tested and at least the first service update, which means patches for any issues that they found, has been released. It has gone through extensive testing. They have made us aware that that first service update is due at any time. So I fully expect that we will be starting to do the 2017 upgrades probably in March and maybe a little bit sooner if that's available. So just wanted to make everyone aware of where we are with that. And so unless something changes, we do plan on starting to install the 2017 version in March of this year. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending today. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to spend with us, and just follow up with me or with Dee Dee with any additional questions.
Pam,
Yes, ma'am.
Pam, actually, we have a question here. The question is, what about 100C? Well, there will be a discussion about what is different in that version.
The enhancements that I talked about today are also in 100C. So 100C has a little bit different, a different look as far as the user interface is concerned, but all of the new things that have been added to 2017 will be in 100C as well. So let me know if that answers their question. And again, if that doesn't answer their question or they want a little more information, feel free to email us and we'll be glad to get with you.
I think it must have answered it.
Okay, all right. Anything else before we end today, Dee Dee?
Let me double check down here. No, it looks like not today.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and we look forward to continuing to work with you this year, and just let us know how we can be of assistance. So thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.